Opening, Session 7, Dialogue, Writing, Live and Cinematic Conversations. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we step into one of the most deceptive and powerful tools a writer has: dialogue. Not dialogue as casual conversation, not dialogue as decoration, but dialogue as action. In this session, you will learn why truly effective dialogue almost always looks simple on the page and sounds effortless in the ear, yet demands some of the most disciplined thinking in storytelling. We will examine how dialogue functions as movement, exposure, and pressure. How every line spoken in a scene must do work, either pushing the story forward, revealing who a character really is, or sharpening the conflict between opposing desires. You will learn to distinguish realistic speech from dramatic speech, and why copying real conversations is one of the fastest ways to weaken a scene. We will explore subtext, what characters mean but refuse to say, and how power, status, and intention shape every exchange. You will also learn how to create distinct voices that feel rooted in worldview and psychology, not surface-level accents or gimmicks. By the end of this session, you will no longer think of dialogue as what characters say. You will understand it as strategy, confrontation, and control, disguised as speech. This is where your scenes stop talking and start acting. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Session 7 of our Advanced Creative Writing course. I'm thrilled to see all your faces here today, ready to dive into what I consider one of the most dynamic and often misunderstood elements of storytelling: dialogue, writing, live and cinematic conversations. Take a moment and think about the best movies or books you've recently experienced. What made the characters unforgettable? It wasn't just what they did. It was what they said, and perhaps more importantly, how they said it. The triple function of great dialogue. As your syllabus mentions, excellent dialogue is never just filler. It's a powerhouse element that serves at least one and often all three of these critical functions simultaneously. 1. Driving the narrative forward, the engine. Dialogue should not be static. Every line exchanged must contribute to the immediate forward motion of the plot. If two characters are just chatting about the weather, and that chat doesn't reveal a vital piece of information, foreshadow a conflict, or set up a future action, it's probably dead weight. Good dialogue as plot advancement. A character revealing a secret under pressure. A negotiation that changes the status quo. A command that initiates an action sequence. For example, a character doesn't just decide to leave. They tell someone, "I'm leaving tonight, and if you follow me, I'll tell them everything." This one line pushes the story into a new phase of conflict and action. 2. Revealing character, the mirror. This is where dialogue truly shines. A character's internal life, their history, education, class, current emotional state, true intentions, and even their moral compass is laid bare through their speech patterns. It's not just what they say, but vocabulary. Do they use sophisticated, simple, or technical language? Rhythm and pace. Do they speak quickly and nervously or slowly and deliberately? Syntax and grammar. Do they use perfect grammar, or do they speak in fragments and slang? Tone and subtext. Are they being sincere, sarcastic, manipulative, or evasive? A well-written line of dialogue can do the work of a paragraph of narrative description. Instead of telling us a character is nervous, we hear them stammer, use filler words, like, and avoid direct answers. 3. Sharpening the conflict, the edge. Conflict is the heart of drama, and dialogue is the scalpel that makes the cuts deeper. Every conversation should contain some underlying tension. Even if the characters are friends, their desires might be in opposition. One wants to stay, the other wants to leave. One wants the truth, the other wants to lie. Dialogue as conflict intensification. This occurs when characters stop talking around the issue and start confronting it. It's the moment the gloves come off. The key here is active listening and active retaliation within the exchange. The characters are truly struggling for dominance, information, or control, and every line is a parry or a thrust. The illusion of simplicity. Why good dialogue is hard. Now let's address the central paradox of dialogue. Good dialogue often appears simple, yet its construction is incredibly difficult. Think about the dialogue in a great Elmore Leonard novel or a classic Tarantino film. The lines are crisp, authentic, and sound effortless. You might think, I'd talk like that. I can write that. You would be wrong. 1. Realism versus reality, the filter. Real-life conversations are boring. They are riddled with ums, ahs, repeated phrases, necessary but dull pleasantries, and lengthy descriptions that go nowhere. Dialogue in fiction is highly selective, compressed, and purposeful. Your job is to take the essence of how people talk, the rhythm, the specific vocabulary, and filter out all the noise. Every word must earn its place. The writer's voice must disappear, and only the character's voice should remain. This requires a ruthless editorial eye. 2. Mastering subtext, the iceberg. This is the hardest technique to master. Subtext is what the character is really saying, hidden beneath the surface of the spoken words. When a character says, "It's a lovely day," they might actually mean, "Please don't be angry with me." If they just crashed a car, "I know you hate this town, and I'm trying to annoy you." If they are being passive-aggressive, "I need to postpone this difficult conversation." If they are avoiding conflict. The audience understands the subtext not through the spoken words, but through the context of the scene, the character's action or body language, and the accompanying narrative description. Beginners write dialogue where characters state their feelings directly. Experts write dialogue where characters avoid stating their feelings, forcing the reader to lean in and interpret. Very distinct voices, the fingerprint. In a scene with 5 characters, "If you remove the dialogue tags," said John, replied Sarah, "can the reader still tell who is speaking? If the answer is no, you have a problem. Every character must have a unique voice, shaped by the factors we discussed earlier, vocabulary, rhythm, etc. If you give a street-smart mechanic the same eloquent, complex sentence structure as an Ivy League professor, you've failed to differentiate them. This is the difference between writing words and writing characters, crafting and polishing dialogue. To help you polish your dialogue, here are a few practical rules. Avoid on the nose. Dialogue. Do not have characters. State the obvious or articulate, exactly what the theme of the story is. Bad. I feel angry because I've lost everything. Better. Look at this room. Everything is gone. Are you happy now? Anger implied through accusation and context. Vary your dialogue tags. While said is often the invisible workhorse and perfectly acceptable, use action beats instead of clunky tags like exclaimed, opined, or ejaculated. Instead of, "I love you," he whispered tenderly. Try, "I love you." He reached out and touched her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. The action shows the tenderness better than the adverb. Read it aloud. Your ear is the final editor. Read your dialogue aloud. Does it flow naturally? Do the words tumble off the tongue? Or do you stumble over them? If you stumble, the reader will too. A practical application. Designing distinctive dialogue. For the remainder of our session, we are going to put this theory into practice. Your assignment, which we will begin in class, is to design a dialogue for 2 characters with different tones and agendas. Our scenario. 2 characters are meeting for the first time in a dimly lit, high-end museum gallery. They both want the same thing, to acquire a specific, unlabeled antique vase currently on display. They are unaware the other person is also a competitor. Their conversation must maintain politeness and surface-level cordiality while their true, conflicting intentions boil beneath. Character A, the curator. Tone, formal, pedantic, authoritative. Goal, to establish ownership of the vase through academic superiority and subtle intimidation. Speech pattern, long, complex sentences, academic vocabulary, provenance, archival, contextualize. Speaks with a calm, measured pace. Character B, the collector. Tone, casual, wealthy, manipulative. Goal, to dismiss the vase's monetary value and distract the curator while using personal connections to secure it. Speech pattern, short, breezy, and often incomplete sentences. Uses slang or casual abbreviations. Totally, right? Frequently changes the topic to personal wealth or comfort. Example, opening exchange. Observe the subtext. A curator. I trust you appreciate the delicate archival challenge this piece presents. Without any documented provenance, one must thoroughly contextualize the ceramic against contemporaneous Peruvian motifs. B, collector. Totally. But honestly, it just works in the room, you know? Like it's screaming for a spot on my sun porch. Such a vibe. Discussion, character. A immediately asserts their authority and specialized knowledge, establishing the vase as a complex academic puzzle. Character B completely ignores A's serious point, dismissing the object's history, in favor of its aesthetic and trivializing the situation by placing it in a casual setting called sun porch. The subtext is, A is saying, I understand this deeply. It is mine through knowledge. And B is saying, I can buy this and everything else. Your knowledge is irrelevant. Your task is to continue this exchange for 5 more turns each, ensuring that every line drives the narrative, brings them closer to revealing their competitive interest. Reveals character, maintains their distinct voice, sharpens the conflict, increases the tension over who will acquire the vase. Remember, students, dialogue is action. It is a fight, a seduction, a negotiation, or a confession. Treat it with the respect and precision it deserves. Session 7. Dialogue, Writing, Live and Cinematic Conversations. Part 2. Precision, Power, and Control. Good. Now that we have dismantled the myth of natural dialogue and understood its 3 core functions, movement, revelation, and conflict, it's time to go deeper. Part 1 gave you awareness. Part 2 gives you control. From this point forward, we are no longer asking what dialogue is. We are asking how dialogue dominates a scene. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Most dialogue fails not because it is badly written, but because it is passive. Today we will fix that. 1. Dialogue is not speech. It is strategy. Real people talk to communicate. Characters talk to win. Every line of dialogue must be motivated by an intention. Even casual dialogue is never casual in drama. A character always wants something, even if what they want is to avoid wanting. Before writing a single line, you must answer one question for each character in the scene. What am I trying to achieve right now, in this conversation? Not in the story. Not in life. Right now. In this moment. Sometimes the goal is obvious, to threaten, persuade, seduce, extract information. Sometimes the goal is subtle, to appear harmless, to delay a decision, to test power. Once intention is clear, dialogue stops being decoration and becomes action. If a line does not change the emotional, informational, or power balance of the scene, it does not belong there. 2. Power dynamics. Who controls the conversation? Strong dialogue is always asymmetrical. Someone has the upper hand or is trying to gain it. Control in dialogue can appear in many forms. Who asks questions and who answers, who interrupts and who waits, who explains and who deflects, who stays calm and who loses rhythm. The mistake many writers make is giving all characters equal conversational power. Real drama requires imbalance. Consider this. A character who speaks less but listens precisely often holds more power than the one who talks constantly. Silence can dominate a room. Hesitation can signal fear or calculation. Dialogue is not only about words. It is about who controls time, space, and attention inside the scene. If you cannot clearly identify who is winning the conversation at each stage, the dialogue is unfinished. 3. Compression. Why great dialogue feels sharp. One of the biggest weaknesses in early drafts is over-explaining. Writers are afraid the reader won't understand, so they add clarification. And in doing so, they kill tension. Professional dialogue is compressed. Meaning is packed tightly. The fewer the words, the more interpretation the reader must do. And that creates engagement. Think of dialogue as pressure. Compression increases pressure. Instead of, I don't trust you because you lied to me yesterday. Try, you've been honest before? Same conflict, far more dangerous. Cut explanations. Cut emotional summaries. Let implication carry meaning. Your reader is not fragile. Trust them. 4. Subtext in motion, not decoration. Subtext is not something you sprinkle on top of dialogue to make it deep. Subtext emerges from conflicting intentions inside shared language. The key is this. Characters talk about one thing while fighting about another. Surface topic, the vase. Real topic, ownership, power, access. Surface topic, weather. Real topic, avoidance, guilt, threat. If both characters are talking about the same thing for the same reason, you have no drama, only information exchange. Subtext should evolve as the conversation progresses. What is hidden at the beginning becomes more visible under pressure. Politeness cracks. Metaphors sharpen. Language turns personal. When subtext does not shift, dialogue stagnates. If distinct voices are not accents, they are worldviews. Many writers think distinct voices mean slang versus formal speech. That is only the surface. A character's voice comes from how they perceive reality, what they value, what they fear, what they believe language is for. An academic intellectual uses language to define, frame, and control meaning. A wealthy manipulator uses language to dismiss, reduce, and redirect. These are not stylistic choices. They are philosophical positions. To test voice integrity, remove dialogue tags and ask, could only this character say this line? In this way, at this moment. If the answer is no, the voice is generic. 6. Dialogue and physical action. One body, one voice. Dialogue floating in empty space feels theatrical in the worst way. Words must be grounded in physical presence. Action beats do more than replace dialogue tags. They reveal emotional state, shift power, create rhythm and pacing. A character standing still while speaking has a different authority than one pacing. Touching objects or avoiding eye contact. Use physical action strategically, not constantly. One precise movement can carry more meaning than 5 emotional adjectives. Remember, people rarely say their strongest emotions. Their bodies betray them. 7. Editing dialogue ruthlessly. Your first draft should be generous. Your second draft must be brutal. When editing dialogue, ask, can this line be cut without losing tension? Can 2 lines become 1? Is this information already implied elsewhere? Is the emotion clearer if spoken or if avoided? Cut polite greetings. Cut farewells. Cut filler. Dialogue begins late and ends early. 8. Advanced exercise guidance. Your assignment revisited. In your 2-character dialogue exercise, do not focus on clever lines. Focus on escalation. Each exchange should 1. Narrow the distance between their desires. 2. Increase the risk of exposure. 3. Shift control back and forth. If the scene could continue indefinitely, you haven't written conflict. You've written coexistence. End the dialogue at the moment just before open confrontation. That's where tension is sharpest. Final thought. Dialogue is not about sounding real. It is about feeling inevitable. When dialogue works, it feels as though it could not have been written any other way. Yet no one actually speaks like that. That is the paradox you are learning to master. Dialogue is pressure. Dialogue is power. Dialogue is action disguised as speech. Write accordingly. That concludes part 2 of session 7. Today, we stripped dialogue down to its true function. You learned that dialogue is never neutral. It is never filler. It is never there simply to sound clever or natural. Dialogue is a form of action, one that negotiates power, exposes intention, applies pressure, and moves the narrative forward through conflict, rather than explanation. We examined why strong dialogue is compressed, selective and purposeful, and why saying less often reveals more. You learned to trust subtext instead of exposition, implication instead of explanation, tension instead of clarity. You explored how voice is shaped not by vocabulary alone, but by a character's worldview, fears, and desires. Most importantly, you learned that every line of dialogue must change something. The balance of power, the level of risk, the emotional temperature, or the direction of the story. If nothing changes, the dialogue fails, no matter how beautiful it sounds. As you leave this session, carry one principle with you. Characters do not speak to express themselves. They speak to get what they want, or to stop someone else from getting it. When your dialogue achieves that, it stops being conversation. It becomes cinema on the page. That concludes session 7.